Before we get to the CFP rankings, here's what happened this week in college football. The Badgers won the only ranked matchup of the week as they defeated Michigan to keep their college football playoff hopes alive, but wasn't enough for them to move up in the committee's rankings. It was close, but Notre Dame pulled out a comeback win over Navy, although their hopes aren't exactly great right now. Auburn and Bama both played cupcakes and both had little issue. Auburn dropped 41 on Louisiana Monroe. Alabama shuts out Mercer. It now sets up an Iron Bowl that basically acts as a college football playoff elimination game. We'll talk more about that later in the show. The Hurricanes fell behind Virginia early, but they scored the last 30 points as Miami ekes out a 44-28 win that was closer than the score indicates. They stay undefeated. The other top teams had little issues. Georgia ran all over Kentucky to the tune of 381 yards. Clemson crushes the Citadel as both teams remain firmly in the CFP mix. Baker Mayfield told Kansas, well, yeah, you guys can read his words there, lip readers out there. They crushed Kansas, remain in good shape for a CFP berth. In the lone upset of the week, Kansas State goes on the road and they take down Oklahoma State. OK State won't make it to the Big 12 championship game. Loss might actually hurt Oklahoma. And finally, OSU, no problem with Illinois. We'll see where they rank in the latest CFP rankings coming up right now.
Man crates, awesome gifts for men in real wooden crates, wrapped in a cocoon of duct tape, or housed in ammo cans that are virtually indestructible. Some gifts he'll get to assemble himself. Some gifts you'll beg him to share. And some gifts are sealed inside layers of rock-solid concrete. Gifts guys love, from grilling gear to old-school video games and more. Man crates, awesome gifts for men.
Hello and welcome into our college football playoff ranking show. I'm Jordan Giorgio alongside our college football playoff analyst Tom Downey here. Tom, how excited are you to see these rankings after what was a cupcake weekend in college football?
By saying I'm always excited to see what the committee's done this week. I'm always curious to see what they do stupid near the end of the top 25, which no one else, but I think except me, cares about, and the teams involved, I guess. But it's not. I don't know how much change we're actually going to see this week, Jordan. I think for the most part we're going to see a very similar rankings. Maybe a couple of minor shifts, something along the lines of maybe Wisconsin finally jumps into the top 4. I don't know if they will. Yes, they beat a top 25 team in Michigan, but now Michigan's not going to be in the top 25. So we'll wait and see what ends up happening there. That was a good game to watch, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for Wisconsin to vault Oklahoma, who I still think should be number 3 in the rankings.
Yes, you've been a fan since day one, that's for sure. So the rankings will not be as exciting this week, you would say. But what is exciting?
But what is always exciting, Jordan, is Man Crates. They are today's presenting sponsor, so thank you to Man Crates for stopping by and sponsoring today's show. Awesome gifts that guys love. Head over to mancrates.com to get yours today. There's college barware, jerky grams, project hits, and much more.
Yeah, it is the way to go, especially with the holiday season approaching, making us ladies' life easier for shopping for all the men in our life. That's for sure. Man Crates is the way to go. So Tom, we still have some time before the rankings are released. So let's go ahead and get into the week that was. We'll start here first with Wisconsin and Michigan. The Badgers now own a pair of wins over top 25 teams after beating Michigan.
Yes and no. They have 2 top 20. benefit here with having the CFP as opposed to the BCS system, you go undefeated. Even if Wisconsin gets the 3 or the 4 seed, they're still in, even though they might not have been in the old BCS system.
Well, next up, let's take it to the SEC, Tom. In the SEC, Alabama's coming off a blowout win to Mercer. What do you have to say about that?
I mean, it was kind of what we expected from those two teams. Alabama and Auburn playing a bunch of cupcakes, and Louisiana Monroe and Mercer reversed those.
Now, they still have.
Over either Alabama or Auburn, who could be top 5 when that matchup occurs. Alabama could still be number 1. So that's where we're at with Georgia. For Clemson as well, look, the Citadel's not a good program. Let's not pretend that they're a bad or a good program or anything. This was just Clemson doing what they needed to do. The win is a win, and they move on from
Will
there.
it have a negative effect, though, in the playoff rankings?
In the sense it'll have a negative effect on their strength of schedule.
Okay.
But the boost for Clemson is that it's not like Oklahoma or Miami played a great team. Virginia's not bad. Virginia's better than those other teams. But the committee's not going to say, well, Clemson, we're going to penalize you for putting up 61 points on a bad football team. They're going to say, all right, they won. They're more or less going to approach it as a bye. And that's what they're going to do. Like, all right, Clemson had the bye. They got a win in the win column. They didn't do anything to cause them to drop.
Well, here on the screen, we have Clemson's road to the playoff. What could happen? They must get past Miami and likely will be out without an ACC championship.
Yeah, I don't see Clemson, if they lose to Miami, I don't see how Clemson gets in. I'm sure there's some kind of absolutely total crazy chaos scenario where, like, Georgia loses in the regular season then wins the SEC. I think something like that could happen, but in all likelihood, Clemson has to win the ACC championship to get in. And if Clemson wins that game, there is still a chance that the Hurricanes can sneak back in and find their way in as an extra team if Wisconsin loses. All the chaos theories more or less revolve around Wisconsin losing and having a 2-loss Ohio State team as the Big Ten champion.
Well, next up, we have the Sooners coming off a win to Kansas. They still control their own destiny as well. If the Sooners win out, they're in. Simple as that, right, Tom?
Absolutely. If they lose, I don't think they're going to find their way in because the committee clearly doesn't value them very much. Although the big problem potentially for Oklahoma and for OSU, Oklahoma beat OSU this year on the road. So that chaos scenario is a little bit less likely of the ones we're going to talk about later on today and in future shows. But with Oklahoma, look, Kansas is a terrible football team. This was not a surprise that they put up 41-3. The main storyline from this game was Baker Mayfield being a little inappropriate.
Baker
yeah, right on cue. Baker Mayfield.
Perfect.
I hate that ESPN blurred that out. Shame on ESPN for that. But Oklahoma's in really good shape if they win out. They're in. We'll get to some more potential scenarios around TCU. What happens if TCU wins the Big 12 championship?
Do you think that his discipline, though, not starting this upcoming weekend against West Virginia, will have some impact?
It won't. I'm sure there'll be like a couple Heisman voters who think that Baker Mayfield doesn't have the right attitude to win the Heisman, and that could be the case there. But in terms of the playoff, in terms of the game against West Virginia as well, West Virginia's probably not going to have Will Grier. If that's the case, they're going to be fine. Kyler Murray, their backup, by the way, is really good.
Right.
So he's not Baker Mayfield, but he's going to be just fine.
Definitely going to be a test there, but we still have some time before the rankings are released to us. So let's go ahead and look at Chat Sports, what we project the new top 10 will look like. Let's take it first to 6 through 10. We have Penn State at number 10, followed by Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, and Auburn.
Yeah, for those of you that remember last week's rankings, there's no change.
No change there.
Penn State, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Georgia, Auburn. I mean, what team did anything to justify them moving up in the rankings? Penn State beat up on a bad Nebraska team. Ohio State beat up on an even worse Illinois team. Notre Dame actually kind of got a fight from Navy. That was actually a bit of a close game. Georgia beat up on a Kentucky team that's going to a bowl game, but that's not going to be enough to vault them past Auburn, since the committee already said, hey, Auburn, your win over Georgia is more important. That's why you're ahead of the Bulldogs at 7.
So you don't see any major changes from our projected top 10?
I'd say there's a slight chance a team like TCU ends up getting in the top 10, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that with what we had with a down week in college football, the top 10 is going to remain the same, or at least the bottom 10.
Well, we
have
a couple 2-loss teams up there. Any chance? Which one do you got that has the best chance of making
Auburn.
it to the playoffs?
It's absolutely Auburn.
Okay.
If Auburn wins out, they're in. They're already 6 right now. They'll have beaten Alabama, a number 1 team. They'll have beaten Georgia, probably another top 5 team, twice. Like, that's a heck of an end-of-year resume for Auburn. Plus, they're only one of the losses came to Clemson in a very narrow game on the road.
Definitely.
So Auburn's in great shape.
All right, well, let's take it to 1 through 5. At number 5, we have the Wisconsin Badgers, followed by Oklahoma, the undefeated Miami Hurricanes, Clemson, and at that number 1 spot is Alabama. Do you think the undefeated Miami Hurricanes need to be above Clemson?
I thought that they should have been 2 last week.
I agree.
I thought the committee got it wrong. I frankly thought it should have been Alabama, Miami, Oklahoma, Clemson. Like, that's what I thought the list should have been. Now, clearly the committee felt otherwise, so I'm not going to make the impassioned speech I gave last week, because I've resigned to the fact that nothing's going to change this week. If there is a change, I don't think there will be, but if there is one, I think it might be Wisconsin jumping Oklahoma. Because Wisconsin had a nice quality win over a good not good, but a quality Michigan program. Oklahoma beat up on a bad Kansas team. I'd say there's like a 0.001% chance that the committee realizes, oh, yeah, we should probably have Miami above Clemson.
Okay.
Clemson beat up on the Citadel. Miami had a scare from Virginia, but this is an actually decent Cavaliers team. Bronco Mendenhall has turned them around since he arrived there. They were not a good program. They're a bowl caliber team. I don't think it's enough, but I do think it's something that the committee will discuss again this week. But in the end, I expect that there's not going to be any changes this week in the CFP rankings.
Okay, well, I want to take it now. We have James Yoder, our other college football analyst here at Chat Sports, on the line now. James, can you hear us okay? I want to go ahead and get your take on our new projected top 10 this week.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jordan and Tom. Doesn't seem like anything probably will change this week. I think of interest for me will be Ohio State and Notre Dame, a couple 2-loss teams that are hoping some chaos happens in front of them. They can get in. Whoever's ahead might spell might tell us where the committee's thinking. If one of those teams ends up on the bubble 4-5, who might get the edge? And then secondly, I guess that's the thing I'm interested going into this weekend is what happens if Wisconsin, if Alabama, or if Miami loses to either one of those teams. Either this week or next. Is either one of those 3 teams as a 1-loss conference runner-up, or, in Alabama's case, a team that wouldn't even make the conference championship game if they lost to Auburn, would they make it in over potentially a 2-loss conference champion is what I'm really excited to see.
All right. Thanks, James. And we also have our producer, Brett Scott, on the producer cam today. So, Brett, go ahead and give us your initial thoughts on our projected top 10.
I'm with James, Jordan. I'm really looking toward those scenarios. What are those scenarios going to be? I have to come off the cam because my mic's over here, but it's just how it goes. What those scenarios look like, and I can't wait to hear what we have to say about those.
Well, yeah, so we still got some time before the rankings are released. So we are going to go ahead and move on to our college football playoff map. We have broken this down into 3 categories for you guys. Winning in, on the bubble, and likely out. Tom, go ahead and tell us what we are looking at here.
Yeah, so more or less it's kind of what it says on the map here. If you win out, you're in. Those teams are Alabama, Clemson, the Miami Hurricanes, Oklahoma Sooners, Wisconsin, Auburn, and Georgia. If they win out, they'll be in. You see 6 or 7 teams on there. Some of them will be weeded out because, Alabama plays Auburn. One of those teams will play Georgia. Clemson plays Miami, so they'll be weeded out a little bit there. Then we get into a little bit of the more complicated scenarios, namely on the bubble. That means the team still has a shot, but it's a bit of a complicated shot to get in. We're looking at Ohio State and TCU, the potential to have the two-loss conference champions. Now, that would require those 2 teams upsetting a team on the win and in. Probably need a little bit of help elsewhere, namely Ohio State, for example. They would like Auburn to win it, or Alabama to win out.
So that could take us to a chaos scenario. Could this be the year where a 2-loss team makes it in? We've got Ohio State, like you said, TCU up there, and Auburn.
I actually think there's a legitimate chance this year. If obviously a 2-loss team in Auburn, if they win out, they're in. Like the committee will put in a 2-loss SEC champion that in the end of the year beat Georgia, Bama, and Georgia in 3 of the last 4 games. Like that'd be insanely impressive.
So which one has the best chance, though?
I
take
think,
it to that.
Do you want best chance as in most likely as things stand now?
Let's do it
or best
at the
chance
end.
to actually do it?
Actually do it.
I think it's Ohio State.
Perform, okay.
I think that Ohio State has the best chance because I think what's going to happen, and I've mentioned this several weeks ago, and a lot of the commenters didn't like it, but here we are. We're getting closer and closer. I know producer Brett Scott has come more and more on my side on this. I think that what's going to happen is Alabama will go undefeated.
Okay.
They will beat Auburn. They will beat Georgia. That eliminates those 2 programs. Oklahoma's going to win out. They're going to win the Big 10 or Big 12, excuse me. Either Clemson or Miami wins, and then we get down to this scenario where does the committee put in a 2-loss Big 10 champion, or let's say Clemson wins over. So Clemson wins, Ohio State over a 1-loss Miami Hurricanes, or even better, the Hurricanes win, Clemson's out, OSU goes in because they won the conference championship.
Okay, my head is
It's a real
spinning.
chance.
My head is spinning. Brett Scott, your take on that, please.
I mean, Tom's got it right. In those scenarios, you're looking at 5 teams for 4 spots. Is it Ohio State at 2 losses, but with a conference championship, versus a Miami with 1 loss and not a conference championship? In the past, the committee has valued conference championships, but we also know that Ohio State got in last year without that conference championship.
We also know the committee bends the rules for Ohio State. They will find their way in. So my vote is on Ohio State. I think as things stand right now, Auburn has the simplest path. The big issue for Ohio State, which this could become an issue for OSU, especially what happens if Oklahoma loses to TCU in the Big 12 championship game, if that ends up being a scenario. TCU hasn't totally clinched it, but they more or less have. The committee at that point would have a serious issue. TCU just beat Oklahoma. All right. Oklahoma beat OSU on the road earlier this year. So what happens then? This, I think, could actually be the overlooked chaos scenario where TCU beats Oklahoma, maybe even handily. How could the committee say, all right, Ohio State, you're in, Big 12 gets left out, given that Ohio State lost to Oklahoma? TCU's got to win the Big 10 championship game, but they still need some help. Ideally, for TCU to get in, Wisconsin loses, and I think Miami wins. Because that also eliminates the potential of TCU having to deal with the committee going, maybe we just put 1-loss Miami in over TCU instead.
Oh my gosh, chaos is
I love chaos. Isn't it
everywhere.
amazing?
We love chaos. All right, well, let's take it now to conferences. I'm going to give this one to James first. So, James, could this be the first year a conference gets 2 teams in? If so, how would that exactly play out?
Yeah, so it's tough. I mean, this is the best chance we've had because I said that.
Oh, I think we're having some issues, James. Hang on. I'm going to go ahead before we get that fixed and get Tom's take first. Tom, go ahead.
I think there actually is a good chance, but it does require some chaos, which, always a huge fan of Team Chaos. I think everyone in the comment section will be on Team Chaos as well. Shout out if you are. I think that the best chance in reality is the SEC. And I think that the way this happens, I think what the SEC wants, if they're going to get 2 teams in, here's what they need. Step 1, Ohio State
beats Wisconsin. That eliminates Wisconsin because somebody's going to put an undefeated Big Ten team in. Oklahoma wins, and the Miami Hurricane wins. So Oklahoma and Miami are 2 teams in. That leaves the SEC winner, and I think what they need is the Georgia upset Alabama after Alabama beats Auburn. In that scenario, I believe that what would happen is the committee would say, all right, Oklahoma, Miami, you guys are in. After you, obviously Georgia's in because they won the SEC. We're going to put Alabama with 1 loss in over Ohio State, even though OSU has 2 losses and the conference champion.
Interesting. All right. We love chaos around here. James, I'm going to try and see do we have you? Can we get your take on if 2 teams from a same conference could get in?
You guys tell me. You hear me okay?
Yep. You hear you. Great. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So it's going to come down to, really what it comes down to, if Miami and Alabama win out, a lot of things are going to, I guess Miami, Alabama, and Wisconsin win out. Things are going to take care of themselves. Boring, selection Sunday a couple weeks from now. But if any of those teams loses, then we have a lot of chaos. And so, kind of thinking of the 2 teams in one conference, I think Alabama is going to lose one of these next 2 weeks. I think it probably comes this week versus Auburn. This Auburn team has been playing probably as good as anybody in the country over the past 3 or 4 weeks. And I'll tell you this, I don't think Alabama has improved much as a team in the last, really this entire season. They came in as a strong team. I don't think I've seen anything that showed me that there's marked improvement from Alabama, but Auburn's continuously getting better. And so if Auburn wins, as Tom said, I think of course they go in. If they beat Georgia as well, they'll have one of the better last months of the season. And then I think you get a 1-loss Alabama, who would be number 1, that wouldn't drop past number 4. So I think the SEC clearly has the best chance, but make no mistake, the ACC and the Big Ten.
Excuse me, James, I hate to interrupt, but we have the rankings, and we'll get back to your take in a second. Yes, I know, very exciting. At number 25, we have Virginia Tech, followed by South Carolina. Boise State making their way up to number 23. At number 22, we have Northwestern. At 21, we have Stanford, followed by into the top 20 as Memphis, followed by Oklahoma State, LSU, Washington, and Michigan State. Tom, initial thoughts so far?
The committee finds a way to put a team that really should be in the top 25 in the top 25. This week's winner, congratulations, it is South Carolina. I don't really know why you're ranked. I know you beat Michigan State at the start of the year, so congrats to that. You've also lost to Kentucky. You also found a way to lose earlier this year to Georgia. I just don't understand why they're ranked. The community does this every week. It does set up for a nice Pimento Bowl. Clemson versus ranked South Carolina. But South Carolina's best win this year was, I guess, NC State. They also lost to Texas A&M. So I don't know why they are ranked. They've really beaten no one this year. Makes no sense. Every week the committee does it. I would have preferred Iowa State or even Michigan still staying in there.
Anything else here that you see that the committee got correct? Perfectly correct.
I'm still a little surprised that Washington is 17 behind a 3-loss Michigan State team. I understand the rationale behind it. It does seem a little low though for Washington, and I would like to see UCF ranked higher.
I know. I think there's a little bit of disrespect there still for the UCF Knights.
I mean, I don't really.
I know their strength of schedule is not there, but I mean, not different than Wisconsin. You talked about this last week.
It's a little bit better now for Wisconsin, only because of Northwestern. I think that when it comes to UCF, I would like to see them just a little bit higher.
Well, at number 14, we have Mississippi State, followed by Washington.
Washington State.
Washington State. Sorry about that.
Those are your teams there. Mississippi State, the committee continues to love Mississippi State. And I suppose I understand why. That's one of the examples of the committee being higher on a team than the AP poll. Mississippi State didn't drop after they lost to Alabama, and then because of a team like Oklahoma State lost, they rise up.
Well, we have TCU and USC coming in at number 12 and 11.
I actually think TCU should be ahead of
Totally.
USC. I think that maybe there's a little bit of preseason bias towards USC.
Well, we got number 10 right here at Chat Sports. We have the Penn State Nittany Lions at number 10.
No change there. We'll see if the other top 10 changes. I'm not surprised Penn State's at 10. They've got the tough scenario of not having really beat anyone.
Right, and Ohio State comes in at number 9. 2 for 2?
Look, no changes yet. I don't know if we're going to see any real changes. OSU is still a good team. I think they're in really good shape. Again, folks, we mentioned this at the top of the program. If Ohio State wins out, I think they might find their way into the CFP this year.
Next, we have Notre Dame coming in at number 8.
Now, for some, I think that, Notre Dame, you're ahead of Ohio State. How can OSU get in over Notre Dame? Simple. Notre Dame, no conference championship. So that hurts them because they missed out on the chance to beat a really good program. And then B, Ohio State gets to play Wisconsin. So that's going to give them a win that's going to vault them over Notre Dame. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Again, no changes yet in the top 10. I don't know if we're going to see any changes, and my expectation is that we probably don't in the end.
With what we've seen so far, you agree with those?
The top, look, there are some things I'd like to change. I think I can go on my rant maybe later on in the program when it comes to Miami, Oklahoma, and Clemson's rankings. I think in particular, I am a little bit surprised to see Washington so low, UCF so low. I think that's kind of what it was last week, but why make all these necessary changes? Like, why did Mississippi State suddenly jump UCF this week? Like, there are some things I don't really understand the committee kind of does every week.
Well, at number 7, we have the Georgia Bulldogs.
Still no changes again. You have to put them over Notre Dame. That's frankly as low as Georgia can go right now because they beat Notre Dame head-to-head. Plus, with one loss, there's no way you're going to put them behind any more two-loss teams other than Auburn, who once again remains ahead of Georgia because the Tigers won that head-to-head matchup over the Bulldogs earlier this season.
And still have complete control of their playoff fate at this point. So let's go ahead and recap what we have so far. At number 25 in our new college football playoff rankings is Virginia Tech.
Glad to see him back on there.
Yeah, exactly. At number 24, we have South Carolina, followed by Boise State at number 23, Northwestern and Stanford at number 21. And at number 20 is Memphis, followed by Oklahoma State, LSU, Washington, and Michigan State. At number 15, we have UCF, Mississippi State, Washington State, TCU, and USC. At number 11, into the top 10 is Penn State, followed by Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Georgia, Tom.
I still am very disappointed by the committee's refusal to have any respect for South Florida. Look, I know they haven't played anyone. I know that it's not maybe the greatest program. They're definitely not worthy of being top 15. This is a good football team, though. They should be in over South Carolina. Like, I know that South Florida hasn't played a bunch of great teams this year, but they've done a good job. I know Illinois is a bad team. They found a way to beat Illinois. I know that they lost to Houston at home. That was a rough loss, but this, I think, is a quality South Florida team, and I'm always a little bit disappointed to see the committee not give any real respect to a group of 5 teams. They did it with UCF. They've done it with Memphis. They do it every year. They put no respect on those names.
Well, we might get some answers this week. The war on I-4, USF and UCF. It's going to be interesting. So you think UCF is not getting the respect they deserve?
I think both teams are getting undervalued. I think UCF should be near the top 10 and not just at 15, which I think is where the committee's just going to stick them because they didn't move up last week even though Oklahoma State lost. I think with South Florida, they are disrespected. They shouldn't be like 18 or anything outlandish, but they should be like 24 instead of a South Carolina team, which I like watching the Gamecocks play. Jake Dunn's got a great future ahead of him. They're not a top 25 program. Like, they haven't beaten anyone. Oh, they beat NC State. Cool. At the beginning of the year.
Doesn't say much. Well, I want to go ahead and get producer Brett Scott's initial thoughts with our ranking so far. Brett?
Well, Jordan, so far, chalk. Yes. So, not
what we
many thoughts.
expected, right?
I expect chalk here up at the top as well. I think the only thing you could maybe see happen is the shuffling between Clemson, well, maybe Miami. I guess 2 through 5 you could shuffle. Whether or not they value the Wisconsin win over and now unranked Michigan team.
The curse of beating a lowly top 25
Yeah, more
program.
than Oklahoma's win over Kansas or name your
Miami's
Kansas not so great
best
win over
JUCO
Virginia.
program in college football.
Yeah.
They got that on their resume.
Still waiting to get those rankings, guys. We'll get them up here in just a second, though.
All right, well, let's go ahead. We still have James Yoder on the line. James, I want to go ahead and get your thoughts while we are waiting for the rest of the rankings. Go ahead and tell me your initial thoughts.
Well, I think what we've seen so far is kind of in line with what the expectation is. I'm more really interested to see, what's going to happen this weekend, what's going to happen in championship weekend, and really talking about those scenarios. The biggest scenario of those being is there's a 1-loss Alabama, there's a 1-loss Miami, or one team that we haven't talked a ton about is the one-loss scenario to the one-loss Wisconsin getting the college football playoff if they don't win the conference championship. And I
All
think
right.
that's
Excuse me, James. I got to interrupt because at number 1, we have Alabama coming in, and at number 2 are the Miami Hurricanes. Tom looks very
the committee
excited.
changed and they got it right this time.
Oh, and we have number 3 coming in right now. It's the Clemson Tigers.
I'm actually surprised that the committee decided a win over Virginia was all that separated Miami and Clemson. This kind of feels like more of a correction, knowing that they got it wrong last time.
Right, and at number 4, we have the Oklahoma Sooners.
This is almost the way it should be, committee. You're so close. Just flip-flop Oklahoma and Clemson, and I am in total agreement with you. You're so close right now.
Waiting on that 5 and 6 spot. Now coming in at number 5, we have Wisconsin.
And therefore we know that we know who number 6 is going to be. We won't spoil it quite yet for you guys. I think that in the end here, Wisconsin is in the right spot at 5. I am a little bit glad to see the Hurricanes jump the Clemson Tigers. I'm surprised. I didn't anticipate this, and I'm curious.
But you wanted it. You were looking for that to happen. It should have been.
Miami should have been above Clemson.
Last week, correct?
Yeah, last week. And because Miami has had some quality wins this year. Notre Dame, Virginia Tech, who's now back in the top 25. Maybe that's what changed the committee's mind. All of a sudden, Vatek's now a top 25 program again. By the way, there is number 6, Auburn.
All right, well, we got your initial thoughts on what we have so far. So, James, we'll go back to you since I had to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Miami being number 2, I think is a welcome surprise this week. So we're setting up a 2 versus 3 Miami Clemson. I think what that signals to me, guys, is that if Miami loses, they would get in over a number 2, a 2-loss conference champion. As long as that 2-loss conference champion is Auburn, who gets in regardless. So I think a 1-loss Miami gets in over a 2-loss Ohio State or a 2-loss TCU should those programs win their respective conference championship games. Is how I'm seeing this right now. I'm not sure what you think, Tom.
I am pretty curious here. I think the fact that there are still – I think actually Clemson dropping might end up hurting the Hurricanes if they lose to Clemson. Because now they end up losing to the number 3 team as opposed to the number 2 team. I still think that the SEC and ACC have real chances to make it to the CFP if things break the way they need to break. But I'm excited for these chaos scenarios. I always hope chaos happens. We got a little tease of it today with the Hurricanes jumping Clemson. Now I need to see more. All
right. Well, for those of you just joining us, before we go ahead and recap the new Top 25 playoff rankings, let's go ahead and look back at the past weekend in college football.
Before we get to the CFP rankings, here's what happened this week in college football. The Badgers won the only ranked matchup of the week as they defeated Michigan to keep their college football playoff hopes alive, but wasn't enough for them to move up in the committee's ranking. It was close, but Notre Dame pulled out a comeback win over Navy, although their hopes aren't exactly great right now. Auburn and Bama both played cupcakes and both had little issue. Auburn dropped 41 on Louisiana Monroe. Alabama shuts out Mercer. It now sets up an Iron Bowl that basically acts as a college football playoff elimination game. We'll talk more about that later in the show. The Hurricanes fell behind Virginia early, but they scored the last 30 points as Miami ekes out a 44-28 win that was closer than the score indicates. They stay undefeated. The other top teams had little issues. Georgia ran all over Kentucky to the tune of 381 yards. Clemson crushes the Citadel as both teams remain firmly in the CFP mix. Baker Mayfield told Kansas, well, yeah, you guys can read his words there, lip readers out there. They crushed Kansas, remain in good shape for a CFP berth. In the lone upset of the week, Kansas State goes on the road and they take down Oklahoma State. OK State won't make it to the Big 12 championship game. Loss might actually hurt Oklahoma. And finally, OSU, no problem with Illinois. We'll see where they rank in the latest CFP rankings coming up right now.
Okay, Tom, well, not the most exciting weekend in college football, but you know what is exciting?
Man Crates. Awesome gifts that guys love. Thank you to Man Crates for sponsoring today's show. Head over to mancrates.com to check out what they've got to offer. I'm talking barware, jerky grams, project kits, and much, much more.
Making us ladies' lives so much easier when shopping for the men in our life, so Man Crates is definitely the way to go. Let's go ahead and recap our new Top 25 playoff rankings. We'll start at number 25. Is Virginia Tech, followed by South Carolina, Boise State, Northwestern, and Stanford at number 21. At number 20, though, we have Memphis, followed by Oklahoma State.
Big drop for the Cowboys.
Very big drop. And at number 18, we have LSU, followed by Washington and Michigan State. Into the top 15 is the UCF Knights. At number 14, we have Mississippi State, followed by Washington State, TCU, and USC. Into the top 10 is Penn State, followed by Ohio State. Notre Dame at number 8, and the Georgia Bulldogs coming in at number 7. As we take it to number 1, we'll start with Alabama, followed by number 2, the undefeated Miami Hurricanes. At number 3 is Clemson, and at number 4 is Oklahoma. Wisconsin at number 5, and Auburn at number 6.
Obviously, the big takeaway, the Hurricanes jumped Clemson after beating Virginia. Came from behind in that one, a bit of a scare there. The Cavaliers put in the Hurricanes. Clemson beat the Citadel, pounded on them, but it wasn't enough to keep their number 2 spot. I still believe this is a little bit more of course correction, with the committee deciding, you know what, we probably got it wrong last week. We need to put the Hurricanes above Clemson, because I don't really think that the difference between Clemson and Miami last week was Virginia. Like, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But the committee has it right now, so that's what I care
And we
about.
agree with it here.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Now just get Oklahoma above Clemson.
Yeah, exactly. And then Tom will be happy over here at Chat Sports. Well, let's go ahead now and take it to conferences, all right? So we'll start first with the ACC. I think it's pretty simple, Tom. I mean, Clemson-Miami ACC championship, winners in. Do you agree?
100%. The winner of that game is going to the CFP. The question becomes, if Clemson wins,
Okay.
can Miami, now number 2, find a way to sneak in? Now, they need some help if that's the case, but as things stand right now, winners in. If the loser is Miami, assuming Clemson and Miami both win out until that game, then we get a little bit more chaos. I think we might just find a way to get the ACC to have 2 teams in. We'll talk about Notre Dame as well on here in just a second. Notre Dame, we're putting in the ACC group because, well, Notre Dame plays a lot of ACC games. It just makes sense to do that. But in the end, for Notre Dame, they're not in. Like, they need an unbelievable amount of chaos, talking like all the teams out of them losing another game for them to get in. Like, they need multiple 2-loss conference champs, and they would need like Auburn, Ohio State, Clemson to lose and then win, and all kinds of chaos for them to get in, and that's just not going to happen.
Well, we'll bring back in James Yoder. James, is it pretty clear to you that it's Clemson-Miami ACC championship winners in? Do you agree with that?
Clearly the winner is in, and I think what Tom said, it's simple as the ACC. I think they deserve 2 teams in if Miami were to lose. And I'm really interested to see what that happens, because I think that's what's going to happen. I think they both win their regular season finale. I think they meet in the ACC championship game. Of course, Clemson wins. Does a 1-loss Miami get in over a 2-loss champion from another conference is really where the interest lies for me when it comes to the ACC and really the general landscape of the CFP going forward.
Right, and we're going to take it to the Big Ten, though. Thanks, James, for your take. It's looking like it's a much better playoff position for the Big Ten at this point, Tom.
Yeah, I think with the way things have gone the past few weeks with some upsets, it's put obviously Wisconsin's in, win it in. I mean, if they win out, they're going. OSU, look, the loss to Iowa was a huge blow for them, but they're not quite dead yet. They need some help, but OSU, I think there's a way they get in, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's what ends up happening. They always seem to find their way in. And knowing OSU, they'd end up winning it, even though they probably don't deserve to win it.
Right, and this will bring me to a question now for you, James. I want to ask you, who do you think will win the Big Ten?
Well, I think it's Ohio State. I do think they're a better team than Wisconsin for sure. I think they'll win that game. I don't think it's even really that tough of a game, honestly. I think Ohio State will win a rather easy time with Wisconsin. The question then lies to me, just like Miami with Clemson, but this is actually a little different scenario. I think one that needs to be discussed because of what happened last year at Penn State and Ohio State is, would Wisconsin, Tom, losing to Ohio State, let's say it's a close game, is a 1-loss non-champion Wisconsin getting over a 2-loss champion Ohio State? It is literally the exact same scenario as last year, Ohio State, Penn State, and in that scenario, Wisconsin in that scenario, the 1-loss team that lost head-to-head, got in, and the conference champion Penn State last year, this year Ohio State, did not get in. So would we see a little bit of history repeat itself? I'm not sure. I'm not ruling it out at this point. I know no one's bringing up that scenario, but it's one that should be considered.
I understand where you're coming from, James. I think the main difference is, the team that got in Ohio State beat them head-to-head later in the year, and they didn't get a chance to play in the conference championship game. There was also the whole Oklahoma problem, if you recall that, where Oklahoma lost to OSU. OSU had that really quality win. I just have a tough time seeing the committee putting in a team that just lost the Big Ten championship game over a team that just beat them in that game. That's I think, the difference between last year's OSU Penn State versus this year's OSU Wisconsin theory.
Would not have no precedent, though. I'm going to take you a little down history lane, Tom. 2001, I believe it was. 2001, the Nebraska Cornhuskers got beat pretty handily by a top 10 two-loss Colorado team who vaulted up the charts to number 3 on the polls by the end of the year. They kept a one-loss Nebraska, put them in the national championship game, even though they lost that game. Actually, it was a pretty bad loss to Colorado in the regular season finale. It was actually a Thanksgiving Day game, but Nebraska stayed in the conference in the BCS championship game. Got destroyed by Miami, but nevertheless, there would be precedent for keeping Wisconsin in a greater landscape of college football history. So it's not something that has not happened, being the last game of the season by any means.
All right, and that's going to bring us, though, to a reaction poll. We want to know which team you guys have outside the top 4 has the best shot to make the playoff. Give us a heart for Wisconsin, a ha-ha for Georgia, a wow face for Auburn, and a crying face for TCU. What are you throwing up, Tom?
Angry faces OSU, by the way, folks. I think with the best shot right now, it's pretty simple. It's Wisconsin. I don't know if they're the most likely, but they do have the best shot right now. They win, they're in. That's all they got to do. Auburn is in a similar boat. Their schedule is a little bit more tougher down the stretch with both Alabama and Georgia coming up later in the year. So I will take Wisconsin as the team with the best shot. We'll see if that ends up happening. I don't know if Wisconsin's going to get past OSU, though.
All right, well, let's bring it now to the Big 12. They added a championship, Tom, because they needed one. And in the first championship, how could Oklahoma get flat out screwed in this?
The entire Big 12 could get the shaft here. If Oklahoma loses to TCU, both teams, of course, win out. There's a 2-loss TCU team. I don't know. I could totally see the committee saying, you know what? Sorry, TCU. OSU, you're in the conference championship. Or 1-loss Miami or 1-loss Bama. You get in over TCU. I could totally see it being the reverse of last year, where the Big 12 plays the conference championship game in the year they kind of didn't need it because Oklahoma would be in without one, and then they somehow lose. TCU ends up getting the short end of the stick too.
Definitely.
That would be chaos.
James, your thoughts on that?
Well, the Big 12 better be hoping that that Oklahoma wins. I just think that, like Tom said earlier, some preseason prejudice against TCU might be hurting them, and I don't think even if they beat Oklahoma, I don't see TCU getting in, but it would be very interesting to me to see what level of credit that TCU would get for beating Oklahoma if it came down to them versus Ohio State, when Oklahoma absolutely, wiped the floor clean with Ohio State in Columbus back in September. So does TCU, would they get more credit for beating Oklahoma on a neutral site where Ohio State lost them and lost them badly at home? So I think that's a question that has to be answered. But we know that the committee rewrites rules every single year, it seems, for Ohio State. 2 of those 3 years, for sure, they have. And I think the committee's going to see what happens with them this year. It all comes down to Ohio State. It's really the 4th year in a row. I think even in 2015, when they didn't go, they were sitting there as a 1-loss team with a chance to still be the first non-conference champion to get in. It was just 1 year later in 2016 they became that.
James, I really think it would be the ultimate chaos discussion topic if Ohio State wins the Big Ten and TCU wins the Big 12. Both teams are sitting there with 2 losses. Both teams would have played Oklahoma. TCU 1-1 against Oklahoma. Ohio State 0-1 at home against Oklahoma. Then it comes down to how the committee values the rest of the conference. And you've started to see both conferences beat up on each other a little bit. So does the committee value Ohio State's win over Michigan State and Penn State greater than TCU wins over Oklahoma State in Stillwater, I guess Texas, sure, and whatnot? If this comes up, I think Notre Dame is back in the discussion. I think you could maybe talk about USC. USC's biggest problem is their Pac-12 championship game is going to be at best against Washington State, which is in the top 15.
And I'll add to this. USC has a Notre Dame problem, and Notre Dame has a Georgia problem still, and a Miami Hurricanes problem.
So you're saying UMass is the best team in the country?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Go Minutemen.
Simple as that. All right, well, let's take it now to the SEC, you guys. There's a 2-loss Auburn team that still has a shot to make the playoff, but they have a big test up against number 1 Alabama this weekend.
It's going to be a great game.
It's going to be a great
We'll talk
game.
more about that Iron Bowl in a little bit here. All 3 of those teams, Bama, Georgia, Auburn, if they win out, they're going to the CFP playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Where it becomes fun and chaotic is what happens if Alabama beats Auburn and then loses to Georgia, or what happens if more chaos happens. Basically, the chaos is what happens if Alabama loses the game. What does the committee do about a 1-loss Alabama team that, frankly, by the way, folks, has one good win? Mississippi State. Like, I know Alabama's number 1. They've played no one.
Look, Tom, we just got excited about this
LSU.
TCU and Ohio State idea. But if Alabama loses to Auburn, I think Alabama is out. With only 1 loss, I think Alabama is out.
James, sounds like he's butting in. James, your thoughts?
Sure, I think Brett's talking crazy there because it's still Alabama. I don't care. Just like Ohio State, there's 2 schools that the rules are rewritten for them. It's Alabama and Ohio State. It's because their track record, they've been the best programs over the past 10 years, and because they've got the best 2 coaches. They want to see them in. They get the ratings. Alabama with 1 loss, I think, is 100% in, no matter what at this point. Unless Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Miami went out, that'd be the only chance that 1-loss Alabama wouldn't get in my opinion.
Now, here you go, James. 2-loss Ohio State Big Ten champion versus 1-loss Alabama non-champion. Now, it's basically the same scenario as last year when Penn State won the Big Ten championship. Who gets in? Ohio State or Alabama?
Alabama, 100%. Gotta happen. Has to happen.
Alabama's strength of schedule is not nearly as good.
I would actually say it's almost downright bad.
But the strength of their name counts more than the strength of their schedule right now for me.
I don't know if it works that way. I think the committee, in general, has actually been pretty good about avoiding that.
At times, that's how to put in Boise in the top 25.
Boise's 9-2.
Yeah, well, why
They're in the top 25
Why is
now,
Boise
Tom,
in over
over it.
South Florida then? Because people know who Boise is. No one knows who South Florida is.
Hey, South Florida's got their chance this week against
I
UCF,
think there's
and
a
if they win,
significant
they'll be a
people-
top 22 team.
A significant portion of this country, especially outside of Florida, thinks that UCF and USF are the same program.
Okay, you guys, enough debate. Let's go ahead and take it.
Never enough of the debate.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. The argument, I guess, right? Let's go ahead and take it now to the Pac-12. But is there much to talk about at this point?
Yeah, no one's getting in there. It's probably going to be Stanford, USC in the championship game, and USC, because of their Notre Dame problem, and Notre Dame has other problems ahead of them. I just don't see a scenario in which USC gets in unless there's something utterly chaotic, like Miami and Clemson and Alabama and Georgia and Notre Dame and Ohio State and Wisconsin all lose this weekend. That's how USC gets in. And guess what? That ain't happening.
That ain't happening. James, any possible scenario that the Pac-12 could get in?
A possible scenario, possibly, obviously possible, but very unlikely at this point. They're clearly the conference that's on the way outside looking in, and it would take a lot of chaos. Now, if Stanford beats Notre Dame and beats them handily, perhaps, and then USC does the same as Stanford that they've already done, then the Notre Dame problem goes out the window for USC, and I think then you get the opportunity to judge them on their merits versus the other conference champions, and we'll see what the committee thinks of them then. Right now, they don't think too much of them, though, as far as I am seeing based on how they've been ranked over the last few weeks.
Every conference except the Pac-12 will have top 10 teams in their conference championship. And so, therefore, the Pac-12's out.
Yeah. Well, there isn't much excitement there in the Pac-12, that's for sure. But there's excitement here at Chat Sports.
Yes.
Want to know why?
Yes, because Mancrates is our sponsor today. If you know a guy who needs an awesome gift, get him a Mancrate at mancrates.com. Talking barware for college and the NFL, candy grams, jerky grams, project hits, and much, much more. Check it out at mancrates.com. Awesome gifts that guys love.
I love the Man Crates because it's making my life easier when shopping for all the men in my life. Tom, you gotta get a little salty about when I say that.
Yeah, because you make it seem like men are so tough to shop for. We say, oh, just get us whatever, and you're like, I don't know what he wants. We said whatever.
Very tough, but Man Crates makes it easy for us. So let's go ahead. I want to go ahead and recap our top 25 playoff rankings for you guys. For those of you just joining us, at number 25, we have Virginia Tech, followed by South Carolina, Boise State, Northwestern, and Stanford at number 21. At number 20, we have Memphis, followed by Oklahoma State, LSU, Washington, and Michigan State. At number 15, we have the undefeated UCF Knights, followed by Mississippi State, Washington State, TCU, and USC. At number 10, we have the Penn State Nittany Lions, followed by the Ohio State Buckeyes, Notre Dame, and Georgia. We'll jump now to number 1, Alabama. At number 2, the undefeated Miami Hurricanes. At number 3 is Clemson. And at number 4 is Oklahoma and Wisconsin, and Auburn at number 6. There you guys go.
Canes, the big change there,
yeah.
jumping Clemson. We didn't think much was going to change. We were wrong.
Right.
The Hurricanes are now your number 2 program in the CFP rankings.
Well, let's go ahead now, though, and take it to some of the impact games going on this week. Tom, doesn't get much better than this, right? Or bigger than this, the Iron Bowl, where Alabama will face off against Auburn in a game that not only decides the SEC West Division champion, but potentially one of the 4 playoff.
This is pretty close to a play-in game.
Mm-hmm.
I still think there's a scenario in which Alabama loses and still gets in, but it's a little bit complicated. But especially for Auburn's perspective, and I know the Crimson Tide are approaching it the same way, this is the game of their year. If you win it, great. You're on to the next thing. You can still make the playoff. If you lose, your season kind of feels like a bit of a failure because you're so close.
Right.
You're in the top 6 right now, both programs. You're right there into getting into the CFP. If you win, you're probably going to vault in the top 4. If you lose, you're going to plummet quite a ways there. So I'm excited about this game. I mean, this is simple, must-watch football. How can you not want to watch Alabama at Auburn? What a fantastic game. These have always been good games. Even when these programs aren't at the peak level, even when Auburn has some issues, even when Alabama isn't the same program that they've been in years past, these always seem to be close games. And this is kind of a very common theme in rivalry week. Even if the program isn't that good, this is a game that is always close. Rivalries matter. James, I'm curious what you think about this Alabama-Auburn game.
Well, it's one that a few weeks back I thought that Alabama would win it handily. But, Tom, now I'm actually going to project that my prediction is that Auburn wins this game. I know Alabama's still the favorite, but Auburn's been playing great. They've just been beating up on people, and they're a collapse from a loss against LSU from being a 1 loss, probably number 2 ranked team in the country. Maybe, I guess they'd be, it's tough to say because they lost to Clemson, so maybe they'd be 3 or 4 potentially. But, they should be a 1-loss team in all regards. So they beat up Georgia really bad, Tom. I think they're going to get the win versus Alabama. And it's really interesting about this game, how this rivalry, 15, 20 years ago, it was not considered one of the top 3 rivalries in college football. And now I think an argument could be made because of Michigan being down so much the last decade that it's the number 1 rivalry. And 6 of the 7 years, it's tough to believe that 6 of the last 7 years, the winner of this game was played in the national championship game. Can you believe that? Alabama's been in it 4 times recently, and Auburn's been in it twice. They were in 2013 and in 2010. So Alabama-Auburn, that game historically, since the last 7 years, has sent the winner to the championship game. I think we're going to see the same this year. This time Auburn's going to come out on top.
All right, well, we got James' projections. Tom, who you got?
I got Alabama as well.
Okay, awesome. Let's go ahead and take it now. We have Ohio State taking on Michigan. James, we'll start with you first.
Well, I've almost just given up on my Michigan, fanboyish this year, mostly because it doesn't sound 100% likely that Brandon Peters is going to play. And like Tom said, we were talking during the game against Wisconsin this weekend. I think if Brandon Peters stays in that game, I think Michigan wins that game. The defense, I do think it's more of a mindset thing. The defense didn't start giving up any yards to Wisconsin. Wisconsin did not score points on offense against Michigan when Brandon Peters was in the game. He goes out of the game and scores 17 straight points to end it. So with that, if Peters is not 100% healthy, Michigan doesn't have a shot in HE double hockey sticks to win this one. So it really depends on the quarterback. If it's John O'Korn, it's 42-3. I don't see how Michigan scores a point. It's an all-time blowout. If Peters is in the game and the mindset changes, Michigan has a chance that still Ohio State wins by 10 points or more, even with Brandon Peters in the game. And then, they're setting themselves up to have back-to-back wins against, Michigan and Wisconsin. And, I think they're if I would say they'd be better than not likely to be in the playoff at that point if they win those 2 games.
All right, well, that was the Michigan Insider's takes. Tom, your initial thoughts?
I totally agree with them. I think this is going to end up being a big win for OSU. It's not that Michigan's a bad program. I think it's that the quarterback play continues to haunt them. There's a massive difference for that team when they play John O'Korn versus Brandon Peters, and you can kind of tell from the players when the Peters in the game, there's some more energy. There's some belief that, like, oh man, when Peters playing, all right, we're going to win. But then they go to O'Korn, it's like, well, game over. We're not going to win this one. And it affects the offense. The defense seems to play better for whatever reason with Peters and then O'Korn. So unfortunately for Michigan, I think this is going to be an OSU win, even on the road.
Most definitely.
Probably won't be as great as last year's game. Fantastic finish.
Exactly.
At least for OSU fans, not so much for the Michigan fans.
Right. And well, lastly, we have the Clemson Tigers heading to Gamecock territory for a final regular season test.
Well, now we've got South Carolina ranked. It's almost like the committee wanted this to be a ranked matchup. I don't know. Ooh, it's on ESPN.
Interesting.
I'm going conspiracy theory. The ESPN got the committee to put South Carolina in the rankings so they could have a top 25 matchup in prime time on Saturday night. So that's where I'm at. In the end, though, this is going to be a Clemson blowout.
All right.
South Carolina's not a terrible program, but they are not up to Clemson's par quite yet.
Well, there you go, James. Your take, Clemson, South Carolina?
Clemson wins with relative ease. It's not that close. I agree with Tom. It's a conspiracy. ESPN lost the Ohio State-Michigan game, which was on Fox this year, which is a terrible thing. I don't even want to watch the game. Fox announcers are brutal. But with that, they ranked South Carolina in the top 25. Not going to matter. Clemson wins it pretty big.
All right, well, that'll do it. So for those of you just joining us, though, we have a little bit of breaking news. Texas A&M plans to fire Kevin Sumlin this weekend, Tom.
That was the report coming out just a little bit ago from the Houston Chronicle that Sumlin's going to be fired after the LSU game. No matter the outcome, even if they win, they're still going to fire Kevin Sumlin. Now, maybe we'll see a repeat of LSU a couple of years ago. All of a sudden, they changed their mind because the underdog pulls the upset and they end up keeping Les Miles. In this case, it's Kevin Sumlin. I think the reason here, you know that A&M has been looking to fire Kevin Sumlin. They're not super happy with him. He peaked too early, and he's had the same issues over and over of a good start to the year and then completely falling apart down the stretch in October and November, and they're doing that again this year. Also, one reason for the timing here, they're trying to get in on the Chip Kelly fest.
I know. Everyone's trying to get on that train.
Everyone wants Chip Kelly right now. That's what everyone wants, and unfortunately, I don't think that A&M is going to end up beating Kevin or getting Chip Kelly.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out for them in the end. Oklahoma State takes a deep tumble after they lost this weekend. They fall to 19. LSU is now 18 in the rankings. The Washington Huskies are 17. They are one of the lower-ranked two-loss programs, only at 17 behind a three-loss program at 16 in Michigan State. Into the top 15 now, UCF undefeated and undervalued at 14. Mississippi State, who moved up over the Golden Knights this weekend and for reasons that I don't fully understand. Washington State is at number 13. They are 9-2. That kind of begins a run of 9-2 programs. TCU's at 12. USC is at number 11. That is into the top 10 now. And at number 10, we have Penn State. They are at the number 10 spot. We'll keep rolling now in those top 10 spots here. At number 10, it is Ohio State. Notre Dame's at number 8. Jordan, take it away.
Yeah, at number 8 is Notre Dame, followed by number 7. We've got Georgia. We'll jump now to number 1. We've got Alabama. At number 2, though, we have the Miami Hurricanes. At number 3, we've got Clemson. And at number 4 is Oklahoma. And at number 5, we've got Wisconsin, and Auburn rounds out the top 6. James, one more time, let me get your initial thoughts and final thoughts before we sign off here.
Well, those are definitely my final thoughts, not my initial ones. So what I want to talk about more than anything, guys, is Kevin Sumlin out at Texas A&M. I'm not sure. I'm remote now, so I'm not 100% tied in on this story, but that's not necessarily surprising. We've been talking about this for months. But what I do think it does is makes the coaching carousel, since they're potentially going to do it, before the final game or before a bowl game, it makes the coaching carousel a lot more interesting coming up, because I do think that they will throw their hat and will be considered by Chip Kelly in the Florida, UCLA, and that Texas A&M bid for Chip Kelly's service. And frankly, I don't think it's that crazy of an idea to think he might take that job, given that Texas A&M is in the SEC West. Nick Saban's not going to coach forever. And who's the big dog in the SEC West once Nick Saban's gone? Well, I guess it would be Auburn as things stand right now, but, that part of the conference and that conference in general will be, for the first time in maybe 10 years, be kind of, back for the taking. No one can compete with Saban as of right now, but once he's gone, it'll be, potentially, have the opportunity to be one of the more prestigious conferences in the country when, 10 schools think they have a chance every year. Right now, I don't think really anybody thinks they have a chance other than Alabama going into that. So I'm super interested to see what happens. I think Sumlin was a hot coach 4 or 5 years ago, right around the Manziel time. He could have jumped ship to other schools. He stuck with Texas A&M. They probably stuck with him a year too long, in my opinion. But now I think their status is different than when he took the job. When he took the job, they were not yet in the SEC. He's played out since he's got the job. They have been in the SEC. And I think it's a little bit higher profile than they were as kind of the second little brother fiddle to Texas and Oklahoma in the Big 12. So I think they'll swing to the fences and go for a big-name coach if they can get one. And they may pay, $7-8 million a year up with the Alabama's, Ohio State's, Michigan's, and Florida's to compete, with the best schools in the country as far as coaching compensation. So that one just makes the offseason a little more interesting for me, guys. And now another, top 20 program is searching for a coach. And it seems like we're going to have at least 5 or 6 of the perennial top 20 programs looking for a coach, and makes the rumor mill a lot more fun for me.
The Aggies' top target per that Houston Chronicle report is that it's Jimbo Fisher, the FSU head coach.
Don't tell me that.
Yeah, I know.
Don't tell me that,
I know
Tom.
you don't like that one as an FSU alumni. I don't think that's a realistic option for Texas A&M, and I think, James, you agree with me. If LSU couldn't lure Jimbo Fisher, I know that the A&M AD Scott Woodward has some ties to Fisher from their time at LSU. I just don't see a scenario in which A&M actually pulls Jimbo Fisher away from FSU. I think this is an example of a program thinking they're better than they actually are and aiming too high in their coaching search.
Definitely. Well, thank you, James, for joining.
Absolutely. I mean, really quick on that is that if that's who they're going after, they are setting themselves up for failure, because Jimbo Fisher is not, he has no ties to Texas A&M as far as I know. I understand he's one of the best 5 or 6 coaches in college football. No way he's leaving Florida State for Texas A&M. I think they need to shoot for a coach that either would see Texas A&M as a jump up, potentially even in their own division. A guy like Dan Mullen, who's been rumored for a number of jobs at this point, he'd be a nice addition there at Texas A&M. Go for Chip Kelly, shoot for the stars with the best free agent college football coach out there right now. Or, stick in state, Chad Morris to SMU, or, our guy at Houston, whose name escapes me at the moment, a former Texas quarterback. I think that would be a good option for him. Yeah, Xavier Applewhite. Kevin Sumlin comes from Houston himself. They've got that pipeline going already, but they should not be looking at Jimbo Fisher. They're not even going to get a meeting from him. He's going to say flat out no.
I'll throw out the name as well. Matt Campbell, the Iowa State head coach, I think would be a good hire for A&M.
Names are flying everywhere. Ooh. Well, thank you so much for joining us, James. We're about to wrap up here, but before we end here, Tom, your final thoughts, please.
I am very pleased to see the Miami Hurricanes now number 2 in the CFP rankings. They should have been last week. I'm a little surprised the committee made the change, but making the change a week too late is better than not making it at all.
That's true. All right. Well, that's all the time we have for you guys today. Make sure to join us next Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern time, as the new college football playoff rankings will be released after some impact games this week, so you don't want to miss this. For Tom Downey, I'm Jordan Giorgio. We'll see you next time.